Move aside. Move aside. Let the ambulance through. Please move aside.
Welcome to the Ambulance World Podcast, where we make EMS connections across the globe. Now, here's Evan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to AmbulanceWorld.com. Welcome to our podcast today. This is Evan Fewer, and today we got a pretty good interview lined up with you. We have Jessie Dyer from Onsite OHS. I think OHS is Occupational Health Services, and they're a company based out of Princeton, Indiana, that, amongst other things, staffs EMS personnel, medical personnel, to work with the military Department of Defense in Afghanistan. So it's kind of pretty interesting work. It's certainly high dollar work. There's a certain risk inherent in that kind of work. And I'm sure that there's a lot of paramedics out there that would be interested in this. And by the way, I apologize going forward. She'll talk about who she's looking to recruit, what kind of people. And unfortunately on this particular venture of this contract of theirs, they're looking specifically for paramedics, not EMT basics. So sorry guys on that one. So they're recruiting paramedics for Afghanistan, and she's going to talk about all the questions that people have for this kind of job. And this is really cool. If you're looking for a job, this is a great company to work for. We'll give you all that information on how to apply. And if you just want to find out about these types of jobs and the work environment and what the possibilities are for deployed EMS work, this is a really good place to start to learn about those details of that kind of job. So she's going to talk about everything from what kind of people they're looking for, with what kind of backgrounds, how much experience, what type of certifications, how to apply for a job, what the application process is like. You are going to need background checks and security clearances, and she'll talk in a pretty good level of detail about what you need to get a clearance, what kind of people might have a problem getting a clearance, and what the timelines are like for all the clearances, for the job requirements, both physical job requirements, background requirements, educational requirements, and all that kind of stuff. And she's going to talk about how you get there once you're in Afghanistan, what the job is like. She's going to talk very frankly about security considerations, which are something you really have to worry about. But that being said, this is a job. This is a job for people that are going to work on secured bases. So the risk is certainly minimized. It's not absent, but it's certainly minimized. So she's going to talk about the security considerations, what the life is like, where you're going to live, where you're going to eat, where you're going to do your laundry, what your day-to-day life is going to be like. And I'm going to be posting pictures up, you'll see during the interview on the screen, of their clinics and the bases, and get a sense of what life is like there. Talk about their vacation schedule, and the big question, the million dollar question that everybody wants to know is, how much does this job pay? So she's going to address salary considerations, and not just that. Well, we kind of actually touch on tax considerations, which makes this job way more attractive. So it's certainly very attractive. It's got a great salary, but with the tax considerations, it's home run out of the park. So anyway, and we're going to have all of the contact information, how to apply for the job, how to contact her. And that's it. So I hope you enjoy it. And here's Jessie. All right. Well, I'd like to introduce Jessie Dyer here from Onsite. Hi, Jessie. How are you?
Hi, Evan. How are you?
Okay. So, Jessie, we did a little introduction before we got started, so I'm going to kind of jump right in here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about your company?
Sure. My name is Jessie Dyer. I'm the recruitment supervisor with Onsite OHS. And I am recruiting for medical professionals to work in contingency environments in Afghanistan.
Contingency environments. That sounds like it's kind of scary.
Yes, contingency environments is a nice way to say austere and often rough environment.
Well, that's good. I kind of like it like that better because it says what it is, but it also sounds a little exciting. So I actually have a couple questions that I wrote down I'm going to ask you, but kind of feel free to jump in as we go through here. Well, tell us a little bit about who you're looking for, what kind of positions, doctors, nurses, paramedics, firefighters, what are you looking for?
Right. We're looking mainly for paramedics, PAs and NPs,
Okay.
and of course physicians.
Okay. How about EMT basics, or not really so much?
For our contract over in Afghanistan, we actually can't take EMT basics or even EMT intermediates. Depending on what state you're in, your certification varies, and the way they call it is a little different. But what we want is our upper echelon paramedics, the ones with the most experience and the most schooling and credentialing.
Okay. Well, that's actually a good segue too. For these paramedics, what kind of background are you looking for in your candidates?
Right. We like our paramedics to have no less than 3 to 5 years experience. We love paramedics that have clinical experience. As you can imagine, working in a austere environment means that you have to have a lot of flexibility and a lot of knowledge.
Okay.
The scope of practice for our paramedics in Afghanistan is broader than most paramedics ever experience over in the States. So we want to be sure that our paramedics are capable to not only triage, but also then treat a lot of the things that they see on a daily basis over in Afghanistan.
Okay. Well, I can tell you from my personal experience when I was in Iraq, as of now, I'm about a 21 year paramedic. At the time, I was 15, 16 year paramedic. And I remember when I got there, I had a little bit of pre-deployment training, but I was completely shocked at the level of care that I was able to give. I was doing procedures that I would have never suspected would have been something for a paramedic to do.
Right.
Do you guys provide any kind of pre-deployment training or for that expanded scope?
Yes, absolutely. We don't depend on your street smarts to get you by in Afghanistan as much as we want to be sure that all of our medics are at the same level.
Okay.
Not only do we have what we consider pre-deployment processing and the classes therein, which teach you, of course, things like don't talk to strangers and don't launder money while you're in Afghanistan. But then, of course, there's things like your 2-week training. When you actually get to Afghanistan, you spend 2 weeks in Kandahar, and all of our paramedics go through the same training so that everybody's doing the same things in the same way.
Okay, and that's all stuff like antibiotics and suturing and all those things that you would do, not a normal paramedic wouldn't do.
Right, including some minor surgeries, things like that. The toenail is always the example. Things like that we want to be sure that we have consistency across our employees and their experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you need a certain amount of clinical background. How about other requirements? Like I could tell you from my experience, I'm one of those guys that I unfortunately gain and lose weight, a lot of it regularly. And when I got offered this job in Iraq, I had a BMI requirement, and I'll post on the board on the interview what BMI is, body mass index, kind of a ratio of your height to your weight, and so and it comes out as a number, and I had to hit the treadmill and do some dieting to be able to pass my DoD physical. What kind of requirements are you looking for physical requirements from your candidates?
Sure. The DoD physical is exactly what we're talking about as well. Mod 11 states there are lots of things that are excusable and not excusable.
Okay.
Body mass index is one of those things that if you are 40 and above, you will not deploy.
Okay.
Period. It's actually one of the more common reasons someone will be disqualified because, when they check, when they go, oh, well, I'm pretty sure I weigh 145 and I'm 5'2", they go, I'm fine. And then they get down there and they realize that they haven't weighed themselves in 3 years and what's on their driver's license has no representation of what they actually weigh. So we do also have a lot of individuals who get down there and be a pound off, and we give them a little bit of time to, maybe try to get that pound down so that they're at 39, that sort of thing. But yes, a weight BMI requirement is a very easily disqualifiable offense.
Yeah, when I first got offered, I was in the low 40s, and I had my physical at 39.1. So exactly.
Hey, that's all it has to be. 39, and you're good to go.
Man, there were some other disqualifiers that I remember. I think it was diabetes that requires medicine.
Correct.
CPAP.
I'm not familiar with that one, but yes, you cannot be insulin dependent. Uncontrolled hypertension is a big one that a lot of people are surprised with, I think.
Okay.
There are a lot. This is all, what's considered fit for duty.
Okay.
You have to be sure that you're fit for duty. A lot of it has to do with being able to transport medications in and out of the country. It's just more difficult to do, obviously. And then, of course, the BMI requirement, I believe that actually has to do with doing like magic weight math when you're flying on a helicopter.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, if you're on the helicopters are very weight dependent. So if you weigh as much as two people, you're
Right.
just, yeah.
They have to kick somebody else off. They're not real happy about that.
Exactly. I mean, just a side note. I remember a story. We had one of our interpreters who was an American, who was an Arabic interpreter, who kind of somehow he kept his diabetes a secret. He snuck by everybody, and he came home from vacation, and his family used to ship him medication, so. He came home with came back from R&R from vacation with a several months supply of medication. His bag got palletized on an Air Force, C-130 or one of those types of flights, and then the Air Force lost the pallet, which meant he lost his medication. So when he showed up back at our base, he wanted diabetic medication, and although we had lots of medication, the population that we treat are people that don't have diabetes, and that was one thing that we didn't have. I was able to actually find an infantry unit that used to set up clinics for the local population who had some diabetes medication to give him a little bit of coverage, but in the end he had to leave.
Yep, that's exactly right. You can't depend on those sort of things. It's very dangerous to try to do that, with your health while you're in Afghanistan, no less.
Absolutely. So basically, the big disqualifiers, broad stroke, would be any kind of medication or condition that your life really depends on.
Right.
That if you didn't have it, you would be at risk.
Yes, and then of course there's also the ability to duck and cover.
Okay, exactly, yeah.
That's another big one that I think somehow surprises folks. But being able to be mobile enough to, I think the drills, you have less than 2 minutes to reach the particular shelter you're supposed to duck and cover in, basically.
In body armor.
Yes, in like 15 pounds of body armor
Right.
and helmet and the whole thing. So you have to be sure that you're able to do that physically,
Right.
or else you can't go.
Okay. Well, actually, this is, I was going to mention this later, but this is probably a good segue, the duck and cover thing. Now, for people that don't have prior military experience, going into this kind of environment might be a little bit,
Harrowing.
yeah, that's a good description.
Dramatic, but accurate.
So, maybe you could talk a little bit about the safety issues. Are you going out on missions outside of the wire? Are you mostly in secure areas? What's the safety thing like?
Yeah, for contracts for us, we actually don't do any work outside the wire. The only times you're ever going between bases is when you're literally going from one base to the other, usually for a transfer and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Maybe you're getting ready to take your R&R, you got to be transferred from your remote base to a bigger base that has some air capabilities. But we don't do work outside the wire on our current contract.
Okay.
So that means we're not treating Afghani nationals, we're not going out picking up soldiers that are hurt. Our primary focus of care is actually on the civilian contractors.
Okay.
So they come to us for the most part.
Oh, okay. So you're basically in a clinic environment, right?
Exactly. We're in a clinical environment. The EMS bases that we have that we're running ambulances, that has really gone down population-wise. They've found the need less and less for that, which is actually kind of a good thing.
So you don't have ambulances at all under your current contract?
I believe we have one FOB that still staffs EMS, emergency, ambulance, paramedics. Yes, only one.
Oh, okay. So they're basically, you're waiting for people to come.
Yeah, kind of.
So so most of your patients are more routine stuff, not really life-threatening emergency stuff, right?
Well, of course, the possibility is always there. They're our patients, they're our people to care for no matter what happens to them. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side of the adrenaline junkie scale you're on, we do a lot of fit-for-duty physicals, immunizations. A lot of the nationals that come for these jobs have never received medical treatment at all. So you're seeing people who've never seen a doctor, and you can go ahead and imagine both sides of the pleasure and pain of that experience. But that means that we have to catch them up with what the government says is acceptable for them to be on the base.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember when we did fit for duty testing for some of the local nationals, Iraq, different country, but similar circumstances. A lot of times people would fail their hearing test, and when you would check their ear, it was because they never cleaned their ears in their entire life. And we would clean their ear and get, I don't have to be descriptive about it, but after you did that, it was like a miracle. They were able to hear again.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I suppose we think it's funny, but if you think about it, it's really not. But a lot of times, dental problems are a huge issue,
Yep.
especially, they're a huge issue in our country, but imagine in other countries where healthcare in general is not as accessible. A lot of times you'll get a group of contractors come in from a foreign country, third country nationals,
Okay.
and they all have the same dental x-ray. And
Yep.
it shows them all with all their full set of teeth and everything like that, and you can plainly see the person in front of you does not have that same set of teeth.
That's fine. We saw that once with tuberculosis, where we tested a bunch of guys that were positive PPDs, so they had to get chest x-rays to keep their job, and we had like 6 people come back with the same x-ray, and the crazy thing was the x-ray that they gave us was of a female.
Oh. Thought they'd pull a fast one, huh?
Yeah, it didn't quite work bode well for them, but yeah. So let me get so most of the people, they're going to be on the basis. What kind of living? Where are they going to live? Where are they going to eat? What's their day-to-day life like?
Sure. Day-to-day life for an on-site OHS medic in Afghanistan is pretty full. We actually do 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Okay.
Usually what that means is they are living in typically a military tent on one side of the base. They get up, they have to go to the nearest cafeteria to go have breakfast.
Okay.
Sometimes that can take an hour to get there.
Okay.
Then they have to go back to their clinic to start work. So they start, very early in the morning. They work really hard to keep their time schedules. And then they'll work, a 12-plus hour shift, getting everybody basically they're responsible for immunized, for example. And then basically go have dinner and go to sleep and do it all over again the next day.
Okay. Well, my experience with a company that I had worked for, a different company, different country, was that we had days that we were really busy with immunizations or fit for duty testing for local nationals. But then we would go 2 weeks we would see in 2 weeks maybe one guy who had an ingrown toenail, and that would be it. Is your schedule similar to that, or you're busier?
From my experience and everything that I've heard, our medics are consistently busy. They may have, times during the day where they do have a moment to slow down and catch up on their paperwork.
Okay.
Because of course that does not go away whenever you go to Afghanistan. In fact, it probably triples from your average paramedic paperwork fill out. But no, we keep pretty busy. That's all the feedback that I've gotten from everybody is busy.
That's probably a good thing, because at least I had one assignment for 6 months where I saw very few patients, and started to talk to myself almost. Not quite, but it was a little crazy. So yeah, so it probably makes the time go by much quicker. So is there time in their schedule? Now, a lot of people fuss about, oh my God, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. But when people ask me about those jobs, I tell them, well, at home, when you're not at work, you could go visit your friends and go to the mall and watch TV, or go to go and do something social. There really there's very limited opportunity for those kind of things there. So there really isn't anything else to do. I mean, you go to the gym, and some of the bases have a little movie theater or something like that. Maybe.
Some bases, yeah. Something that I always thought was really interesting is Kandahar Air Force Base is huge. It's bigger than the little small town city that I'm in right now, easily. I was told that they have their own TGI Fridays, so if anybody has heard that or has been there and confirm that, I would be really interested in that, because of course they're on a U.S. military base, so there's no liquor. I think that the important thing that is to be conveyed about not having a lot of time to yourself, to hang out, to do all this sort of thing, is you really have to your personality dictates what kind of experience you're going to have in a place like Afghanistan.
Okay.
The U.S. military bases don't give you a lot of opportunity to mess around. You're there to work. Everybody's there to work. It's the military base.
Right.
So I always get a lot of feedback from our employees about how the people that they work with, so other employees, their coworkers, are like family.
Okay.
Working out is definitely something that they all try to do if they have time. We have a small group of folks who organize things like 5Ks and things
Okay.
like that. They make the most of it. Because again, you have a small group of people together in a small space for what seems like a long time.
Okay.
So I think that the big thing is if you have a really good attitude and you're certainly able to read, and of course internet accessibility varies per base, but there is some, so you can do things like at some bases you can take online classes and you should be able to Skype with your family, things like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always saw that the people that did the best in deployment were the people that had something to do. Whether it was they went to the gym every day, and there were some people who just went to maybe church every day or a Bible class, or some people were taking online classes, or when I was there, I learned how to do website design. While I was there, was something I had focused on. So people who had something that they can focus on other than work were the people that always, it seemed to me, did better.
Yeah, and I think that's true, of course, with everything. You have to have some time for yourself to rejuvenate, and you have to carve it out wherever you can. I know that a lot of people find what they do and the patients extremely rewarding. I think that's also common with medical people in general, but when you realize when it's so evident
Okay.
that you are the only person that has ever medically seen this person to help them, it's a big deal.
Okay, well that's cool. Well, so let me ask you. So somebody applies to your company. So let's talk about the process maybe a little bit.
Sure.
So I'm gonna put your contact information up on the screen when we get to that point. So what kind of information do you want from somebody on that initial contact?
Okay. There are several ways that you can apply to us. Truthfully, the best way, and I'm not just saying this because it
Okay.
happens to be easier, but it's the website.
Okay.
Our website, you can apply 24 hours a day.
Okay.
It's pretty easy. You basically just upload your resume and it pre-fills some information.
Okay.
And it's immediately loaded into the system that I go look at the very next day.
Awesome.
And it immediately sends you an email that says we've gotten your application. Here's your username and password if you want to enhance it, which of course you do.
Okay.
Then it sends me an email and lets me know that your application is there.
Okay.
So that's the easiest way for both me and probably for you because you can do it
Okay.
anytime. But of course, the other way is if you're on our website and if you're, having a hard time with maybe with your internet connection, that happens a lot. There are places where you can email the recruiting department.
Okay.
It's recruiting.department@onsiteohs.com.
Okay.
You can email us there. You can send your resume to me and the other recruiters,
Okay.
and we'll get it in the system for you.
Okay.
Now, the difference is when you're going to do that and you're going to directly email someone from the recruiting department, you're also making a pretty decisive first impression.
Okay.
So, I highly recommend not taking that opportunity for granted.
Well, I'm assuming that one of the requirements of the job is being able to operate basic computer functions, whether it's Word or PowerPoint or Excel or something like that. And if you can't figure out the website, it's
Yeah, it is one of those catch-22, if you will. You can, catch my attention by emailing me directly, but if you tell me you couldn't figure out how to use the website to upload your resume, doesn't look good. And we do keep track of every email anybody sends us.
Okay.
So if we get it all the time, someone doesn't realize that there's an actual human being actually checking these things, I think. And like I said, don't take it for granted, use it wisely.
okay. Well, so say they're a diligent person. They go to the website. They appropriately put in their information. What's the next step?
The next step is actually to wait.
Okay.
This is the hardest step. Trust me, I know. The next step usually comes when our credentialing department contacts you. They also get an email to let them know that you have applied for a position that we're watching. So we have like hot jobs
Okay.
that we know we need people for pretty much all the time.
Okay.
They're usually the PAs, the physicians, and the paramedics.
Okay.
So when that email hits, our credentialing department goes in, sees what you've uploaded. So if you've already uploaded, for example, your BLS,
Okay.
your state license, your NAMT, that sort of thing, they go through and figure out what they still need in order for you to apply for the job in that specific contract.
Okay.
And then they email you what they don't have.
Okay. Well, let me ask you. For the paramedics that you're hiring, are they required to have national registry, or is a state certification without national registry sufficient?
It is sufficient. We
Okay.
take one or the other. We love both, of course.
Okay.
We also require BLS
Okay.
and also a CLS.
Okay. Well, for most paramedics, if they don't have it, it's easy. That's an easy fix,
Yes.
in theory.
It should be.
It should be. Okay. So once they go through that, you contact them. I'm assuming you do some interviews.
Right. At that point, what the credentialing department is basically doing the recruiting department a huge favor.
Okay.
They're weeding out people who are non-responsive. They are credentialing people to let us know in the recruiting department that they are capable of fulfilling the requirements on that contract. So we don't waste our time talking to people who haven't submitted their credentials for the most
Okay.
part, because we've got a whole slew of people who are responding.
Okay.
So usually when the recruiting department is ready for, let's say, 3 new paramedics, we go through, we sort by who has turned in their stuff already, and then we start reviewing those resumes and making calls and sending out emails to get set up interviews.
Okay. So the interviews are. I'm assuming you do it either by phone or Skype or something like that.
Typically by phone, but also we're trying to move towards Skype. As we all know, you can say it says a lot about a person if you can function in Skype,
Absolutely.
and also present yourself professionally face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I used to run an online education business, and when we would interview new instructors, it was for instructors who would teach courses online, and we started to insist that the instructors would interview by Skype. And if they said, "Oh, I don't know what Skype is," or "I don't know how Skype works," or "My computer doesn't work," they were immediately weeded out because.
Yeah, you got to know that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you're going to go over to Afghanistan and you don't know how to use Skype, you're going to miss out on a lot of family time.
Yep. I can tell you actually, when I came back, it was funny. I spent more face-to-face time when I was 8,000 miles away in Iraq with my family than I did when I'm 150 miles away from them here in the States.
Right. It's true.
It's kind of funny that way. Okay, so they go through the interview process. You guys are interested. You give them an offer at some point. I'm sure it's a contingency offer.
Yes. Actually, we have all of our candidates interviewed twice.
Okay.
They're interviewed by someone in the recruiting department at corporate,
Okay.
and then they're interviewed again by a subject matter expert. We've all heard of this.
Right.
Our subject matter experts typically are people who have done the job or are doing the job that they want to do.
Okay.
So it's a great opportunity to ask questions, and it's also the best way to weed out people who won't be able to do the job. So usually after the subject matter expert, let's say that they recommend you for hire, then we would send a contingent offer letter.
And what?
That's a big deal, as you know.
So what's that contingency? So that means that a job offer is contingent on some details. What
That's right.
what are those details?
It's contingent based on, first and foremost, when and where a spot is available.
Okay.
So you may think, okay, they've interviewed me for a position. They mentioned a base,
Okay.
forward operating base. That's where I'm going. A lot happens in a couple of weeks in these environments. So the when and where has to do with, okay, we need a paramedic here at the time you get to Afghanistan.
Okay.
So the base that you're, if you have, like if you're only wanting to go to Afghanistan so you can work at Bagram Air Force Base and, work with your pal who you know is in the Army, you know what, probably not going to happen. Bad
Right.
reason for applying for the job. So the when and where is always, it's a Mobius, it moves around all the time. So when and where is part of the contingency. Of course, your background check, your security clearance, and those physical requirements we were talking about before are other things that the offer is contingent on.
Okay. Well, let me ask you the physical. Where do they come to you to do that, or do they do that with like their home physician or something like that?
We have different options. Basically, once you get that contingent offer letter, you move from our recruiting department to our processing department.
Okay.
Now, the processing department happens to be one person, and she's about 2 cubicles away from me, so we're pretty good with cross communication. But she basically takes care of all the paperwork that needs to be done, and she talks to you about your physical and how we're going to fill the requirements or prove your health is where it should be, that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, you talk about background check and security clearance. Are those two completely separate things, and what do we need to know about this?
Well, one thing that you will need to know is it is an extremely large amount of paperwork. If you don't like paperwork and will be put off by paperwork, you don't want to do a contingency job in Afghanistan. But one of the things that you'll have to do is complete the SM-85.
Okay. I'm familiar with that.
Right. Many people are. It's for your security clearance. Actually, our company for this particular contract only requires a public trust,
Okay.
which is different, obviously, than a secret, top secret, etc. And we are actually allowed to go on base prior to receiving that lovely CAT card.
Okay.
So you're able to deploy prior to your public trust being completed. So you get your CAT card, CAT card,
okay.
and then you go from there.
Oh, I thought you said you can go to base without a CAT card.
I'm sorry, no, once you get your CAT card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, if anyone, CAT card is, if I remember correct, contractor access card. Is that right?
I'm gonna have to take your word for it. I think so.
I think that's what it was. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we don't have those long lag time periods where you're sitting around waiting for that to be done. I mean,
Okay.
we do certainly have a long period of time between offer letter and deployment, usually, because this stuff takes time. But we're allowed to go on the base with our public trust being basically promised to you.
What's a general idea of time frame for? And I know that's it's from here to here. It could be, and it is all kind of variables on how many people are being processed in the system at that particular time. But on a kind of a general terms, what could you expect to wait?
Well, this is my very least favorite question, and it gets asked all the time.
Okay.
Everybody wants to know, how long is it going to take for me to deploy?
Right.
I've seen it happen in as little as 3 weeks.
Okay.
That's from offer letter to deployment.
Okay.
That's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
It's crazy. More typically, I see it happening in 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, a lot of that, as you mentioned, has to do with what day your paperwork gets turned into the government and when they happen to look at it.
Okay.
The other side of that coin is it depends on you as the candidate to check your email and respond to any requests that anybody sends you, basically. Because usually what happens, as we do background investigations, there's a lot of back and forth of providing of documents, things like that. And so if you're not a person who checks your email regularly, you're going to see a longer time waiting to be deployed than somebody who checks it daily, or twice, or 3 times a day.
Yeah, I remember with like my circumstance, I don't have a middle name. So, okay. Oh, we're in a small population there, not a lot of us. But I remember on the SF, I don't know if it was 85 or 86, I forget which one it was that I filled out. It would ask for, some of them asked for middle initial, and some of them asked for middle name. So if I wrote NMI, no middle initial, in the place it should have been NMN, no middle name, and there ended up being probably a week or two worth of emails back and forth. Please change this from NMI to NMN back and forth. And I just remember that was crazy. Another thing that I remember was when I turned in my Social Security card. I had the same Social Security card that was issued to me in 1967 when I was born. And they wouldn't accept it because they said it was too old looking. So I had to go to the Social Security office
To get a newer looking Social
to get a new card. Yeah, because mine was all grayed out, and because it was 36, 37 years old. So, and all that kind of put everything, delayed everything down.
And that sort of thing happens all the time. I remember recently, actually, we got back somebody's background investigation, I think it was. And it was just basically, they were giving it a pass-fail, and they were saying fail. And we were like, there's nothing on this. I see no reason for that. So we started to go back and contest it and find out what was going on. when it came down to it,
Right.
the problem that they were having was that when the individual faxed in the document requested, there was one of those big black lines all the way through it, and they couldn't read it, and instead of dealing with it and asking for a new one, they put him in the fail box.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah. So we just had to reopen it up, obviously resubmit the documents, but it takes a lot of time, and the thing that's hard for all of us to remember, because we're in a time frame crunch too. When we hire somebody, we want them over there. We want the spot that we have in mind for them
Absolutely.
to be filled by them. And so it becomes extremely frustrating, and it's all completely out of our control.
So, is there anything maybe you want to convey to potential applicants that if they know about their background, things that you would say, things that might be on the border between they might be able to pass and not be able to pass, or I mean, obviously, if somebody is a convicted felon,
Right. Not
don't apply. But what are some other things that you might think about?
Well, something that I think a lot of people don't think about is they think if they file for bankruptcy, that takes them out of the contention.
Okay.
It doesn't. Actually, the government and the background checks and everything view a bankruptcy filing as a good thing, because
Okay.
they see that as you're taking control of your financial issues.
Okay.
I know one thing that's very commonly is a huge surprise to people is unpaid child support.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. So if you have unpaid child support, first of all, pay it.
Okay.
And then of course apply after you've taken care of that, because it will be a huge red flag.
Okay. How about somebody's credit report? Like if they just have horrific credit, like defaulted stuff all over the place.
Yes, that is a very bad thing. The government does not want to send anybody over to a foreign country that they feel is a risk for laundering money.
Okay.
So bad checks, like, I accidentally wrote a check in someone else's name. Yeah, no, it's not going to fly.
Okay.
The financial stuff is a big, big deal.
Okay.
And, there is some good graces for admitting that stuff, but usually it just makes the process shorter and will end up the same. If you have those problems, you're probably not deployed.
But on the same note, the person doesn't have to have stellar perfect credit either, do they?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, mostly it's criminal offenses or major monetary faux pas.
Okay.
Again, they see someone who has severe money problems as a potential security risk for laundering money.
Okay. That absolutely makes sense. Or taking bribes probably also would.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So somebody goes through the clear. They apply. They do their physical. They go with their clearance. They get a CAT card. Now they're ready to go. So they got to pack a bag.
We send a pretty thorough packing list,
Okay.
as well as what to expect. When you receive a contingent offer letter, like I said, the paperwork starts flying. It can be overwhelming, but it's extremely important to read every document. I know
Okay.
that sounds like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised.
Okay.
The packing list was designed because so many people blatantly ignored our previous packing list and got over there, and we simply had to tell them that, if you can't carry it, you can't take it.
Yep.
So things like that, you have to be ready to take your 2 bags on your back and walk.
It's funny when I was the guy that took too much stuff. So, I was like, I might need this. Yeah, it's possible that this could happen, and I might need this, and I need a backup to that. I had 2 duffel bags that were just able to close. I had a pretty sizable backpack and a computer case. Plus, I shipped over a big Pelican case to myself of other stuff. So when I first got there, they were shipping me I was going from Baghdad to a more permanent assignment, and I had to go fly it on a helicopter. So I remember I had my big giant backpack, my computer case, and 2 duffel bags. And there's no porters, there's no wheeled carts, and you have to walk pretty far out onto the tarmac to get information and keep up with everybody with your stuff. And everybody else has their own stuff to carry. No one's going to be grabbing your stuff for you. And I still remember the first time I went on Black Hawk. This was the first time I had ever been on one. And I'm assuming in Afghanistan it's the same. Most of the flights are at night.
Right.
Yeah. So it was like a 2 o'clock in the morning flight, and we get in and we get seat belted in, and all the bags were piled up next to the aircraft. And I was looking there going, wow, I wonder where the luggage compartment is in this thing. And you know how, and I'm sure from your laugh, you know how this story ends. The crew chief comes and starts throwing all the bags on top of you. And so you're piled up to here on your lap with everybody else's bags. So unless you're willing to carry it, and even if you're willing to carry it, if you go on some flights and you can't take it because they're overloaded.
Right. Yeah. And again, I think that's part of that, magic weight math thing. They have to assume a person is this and their luggage is this, and if we add them all up, this is how many people we can take.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so I think that it's funny. A lot of people, I know I would be terrible at this. I would have an entire entourage of people come to my initial, point of departure with all this stuff, and slowly I would have to pull things out of my bag because I think I would need something for everything. You know what? You're doing the same thing 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Nobody cares how pretty you are. Yeah. Nobody cares even necessarily how bad you smell sometimes.
Sometimes.
Right. The summer gets pretty bad. But you can order things. There's usually a place where you can go, get some toiletries, things like that. People order things online, Amazon, that sort of thing. I know we pretty regularly send over gift boxes to people, and it's totally like a care package that your mom might send you, if you were at college. It has here in Indiana, we have Grippos barbecue chips.
Oh, okay.
It's a big deal. Okay, it's a very big Midwest deal. Grippos barbecue chips, they're awesome, and everybody over there who's been in this area wants Grippos. So we literally send care packages to everybody now and then, and they include, like I said, chips. A lot of times they include puzzle books and crosswords and stuff like that. Just little things so that one, they don't have to work them themselves, and two, so that they can be reminded that we're here and thinking about them.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you're there I'm assuming this contract is a year at a time?
Yes, we do 12-month contracts.
Okay. Now, do they get to any vacation time with that?
Yes. Our paramedics actually get 30 days.
Okay.
And that we actually take those 30 days in 2 segments of 15 days apiece.
Okay.
And we take one of them around 4 months and one of them around 8 months.
Okay.
I will tell you that 15 days that 15 doesn't include travel time, so we give you a day or two for travel on either end of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And we also do some reimbursement for your travel for R&R. There's some sort of magical equation as to which one costs what and how much you're reimbursed for each one. It's a little different, but your R&R time is a lot of people don't know, which I think is always interesting. But R&R is paid time off. Okay. The only time that you get when you're deployed that isn't paid is called LWOP, leave without pay.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And now I can tell you, we're going to be doing a podcast on here with an accounting firm coming up about tax considerations for deployed personnel. And there's a lot of really cool stuff. So if these people are going to be making, we'll get to the money part in a minute, be making very nice salaries. If you come back to the United States for too long, you mess up your tax benefit, which we'll talk more about when we do this podcast the next week or two. So a lot of people will fly their family to Europe or Southeast Asia or Central America and go on vacation with their family then. And for a lot of people, this is the only time of their life they can really afford such awesome vacations.
Yeah. To keep within the IRS their rules, you have to stay out of the United States for 330 days.
Right.
So if we're giving you 30, you got 5 to play with, right?
Right. So
usually what you'll see is that first set of R&R time, you really want to take it somewhere other than the States.
Right.
An accountant will tell you that. I'm not a financial advisor in any way. If I were doing it, that's what I would do. Because if I take my first 15 somewhere out of the States and then a terrible emergency happens and I have to go home, I don't want to run into that because I want that tax-free benefits.
Well, it's huge. You're tax-free. I forget, this year it's somewhere around $95,000, $96,000 now. Is it?
You may be right. It goes up approximately $1,500 a year and has for probably close to 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah, so it's not quite 100,000. So basically, you're not paying any federal income tax on that. So that's 30% more of your money, more give or take, that you get to keep. It's huge.
So you have to watch that. I'm sure, again, your guy will tell you all about this, but it depends on how you're paid. So if you are a 1099 contractor,
Right.
which you are not as an Onsite OHS employee, and the reason we do that is so we can offer you nice little things like insurance,
Okay.
401k, things like that. Seems like a pretty fair trade-off. But only the 1099 contractors get that first, 95 or whatever it is, totally tax-free. If you were filling out a W-2 or equivalent, you're actually going to see Social Security and Medicare taken out of that first 95 or whatever it is.
Yeah, but that's
So,
still a good trade-off.
Yeah, great trade-off.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, a friend of mine who's working on a similar contract right now, he just did his company does 1 month at a time, a little bit different, but he did 1 month where he went to Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Dubai, and Jordan.
Neat.
That's a once in a lifetime kind of trip for most people. Paramedics normally aren't rich people, so
Yeah.
those are pretty cool things.
Christian spirit, right?
Well, this is actually a good segue point. So here's the magic question. Everybody's been sitting on the edge of their chair, or they just fast forwarded through this whole podcast to get to this point. So we know what paramedics make in the United States, anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000, depending on where they are geographically and their schedule and whatever. So they're solid middle class people, but nobody's getting rich as a paramedic. What's the financial incentive to taking a job like this? What kind of money could somebody expect to make?
Well, what we look at is there's this nice little thing about uplift. And for Afghanistan, there is, I believe, a 75% uplift. And it's crazy, whatever it is. Anyway, what we get down to as far as numbers is depending on experience, and depending on what position you're in while you're on contract with us, you're looking at between 100 and 115,000, give or take, and that's not too bad.
It's awesome. Well, they're not paying for food because you get that in the chow halls or cafeterias there, right?
Yep.
They're not paying for housing because they get the Taj Mahal of tents for free, right?
Yes, that's right.
Laundry provided.
Yes.
Flight back and forth provided. So essentially you're paying for shampoo and toothpaste,
Yeah,
more or less.
basically, yeah, and whatever strange things that you do online in your spare time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, okay. which are kind of limited sometimes because of bandwidth and such.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of do math in my head. So say somebody, even a medic who makes $100,000 in this country, which is a rarity. If you make $100,000, you pay probably $25,000 to $30,000 in that range in income tax. So you just went from 100 to 70. And then you have to pay for gas and housing and food and all that starts chipping away. And there's not a lot of people that have much of a nest egg at the end of the year, even at $100,000.
Right, yes. I would know, but yeah.
Yeah, just in theory. So for a job like this, you're not paying for much of anything.
No, that money can go straight home. And most, from my understanding, most contract companies do like a direct deposit into
Okay.
your bank account or whatnot, so that you can set everything up online and you can just watch your money
Yeah.
go higher and higher as you're there, because your expenses are really within your control because there's so few.
When I was deployed, I had some credit card bills, not a lot, but normal consumer credit card debt that most Americans have. I had a car loan which hadn't been paid off. I sold my condo, so didn't have a house to worry about. But by the time I came back, I had a significant chunk of money put away in the bank. I owed nothing to any of the credit card companies, and my car was paid off. And I had a really kick-ass vacation in the middle. So, I went to Israel, Jordan, Dubai, Qatar, and Thailand. Everybody goes to Thailand, so. No. Well, you know what? It's cheap. It's fun. It's beautiful. And it's for if you're doing a long vacation, it's very economical. If you go to Luxembourg and you have to pay $600 a night for a hotel, it might be very nice, but yeah, exactly. So that's why Thailand is one of those good kind of things, not for the other things that you were thinking about.
Yeah.
Cool. So now, how should people contact you? You said through the website. I'll post that up. I'll post up the other URLs or emails that you recommended. I think that's. Do you have anything else you want to throw in there?
I don't think so.
No?
There we go.
Okay, well, actually, one other thing I just did want to hit on real quickly was the safety issues that everybody's kind of staying in the bases. You do have to run periodically to a shelter. I'm sure there's still places of getting mortared and stuff. But for the most part, you really haven't had any serious incidents with people that work for you. Okay?
No, I will say we've been lucky.
Okay.
We have not lost any employees to whatever you want to call it, unfriendly fire.
Okay.
We have had a few very close calls, actually just this past year.
Okay.
Was it the clinic? They go after the cafeteria a lot, which, as you think about it, makes complete and total sense.
A lot of people in one place.
Yeah, a lot of people in one place, and also you cut off the food supply.
Yeah.
It's happened. So, we've had some close calls, I guess. But none of our employees have been, hurt or killed, knock on wood.
Awesome.
So but of course, it's something that you take very, very seriously. I mean, obviously, if you're in Afghanistan, you're on a military base, you take your safety seriously. Everybody is issued that personal body armor, your vest and all that stuff, and helmet, and you wear your boots, and that sort of thing. And, there are regularly, when we're on the phone with Afghanistan, there are regular, planes that go over.
Okay.
And usually our guys go over in 7-2. So it's pretty, they get into a pattern of going, okay, that's a 7-2, then we're good, and I had just learned this actually recently. There's these really cool detection balloons. I don't know the real fancy actual.
Oh, the iStats, I think they call the aerostats, something like that. They call them.
Well, I suppose that I'm not really sure. It looks like a big weather balloon that has all kinds of satellites and crazy things all over it, and basically they just pick out when something's coming towards you. And they're the thing that alerts for the sirens. And my understanding is, sometimes they're right on and the sirens go off and you have about a minute or two to get to your shelter, and then something hits somewhere. Sometimes something hits somewhere and then the sirens go off. So, it's certainly not for the faint of heart. And while we like to talk about how it's kind of like camp, it's kind of like camp that you could get killed at.
Right.
And I do want that to be clear to anybody who would apply for any of these types of jobs. Being a contractor on a military base is not for sissies. That's all there is. You have to have a strong constitution, and you have to know that you can confidently control yourself in situations that you would never have to control yourself in the States.
I think when I'm going to write up my little article that I'm going to embed this podcast in, I'm going to actually use that quote, "Not for sissies." That might be the title of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to say, I've seen that all over the place. I think, what is that site? There's a paramedic site on Facebook that we follow. It always has really funny stuff. He's got a really long name, and he always turns it into an acronym, and I don't know. I'll try to send it to you. He's pretty entertaining, but he always makes up these memes. And one of them had the paramedic symbol and all this stuff, and it says EMT is not for sissies. And I really like it because, dude, there's nothing more true. I think when I first started following a lot of paramedic sites on our Facebook page, at least once a week I would scroll down and then go, what? Oh my goodness. It's so gross. Why are they showing that leg with that limb through it again? It's terrible. But yes, not for sissies.
Yeah, no, but I think at the same time, it's not horrific either. I mean,
it doesn't have to be. You just have to be prepared for that to happen. I mean, you know what? The mass casualty training and drills that they do over there is enough to scare the pants off of the regular
Well, my perspective always was, I remember that I would be in my clinic, maybe I had to stay in a tent, maybe the air conditioning went out for half a day and you were sweat for the day. And I would go, whine a little bit, oh, this is terrible. And then I would see a convoy of Marines coming into the base that had been living in foxholes for the last 2 weeks. And they looked like hammered you-know-what. And nobody complained. Not when one of them complained. You never heard a peep out of them. They were happy to be there to do their job. And then you go, well, you know what? I really can't complain about having a half a day without electricity.
Right, yeah, because it doesn't happen very often. I mean, usually if that kind of thing does happen, there's a real good reason that has nothing to do with us, you know. I think that generally, like, all the feedback I get from people is like, yeah, it's basically a culture shock when you get there if you've never been deployed before. Right. But once you're there for a week or two, you get settled into your base, you feel comfortable with what you're doing. Because, all those different elements being thrown at a person at once, it's one thing kind of relearning your entire scope of practice. Yep. But another thing being in this crazy environment. Yep. And you have to really be able to roll with the punches. And so once you start to get confident about a couple of those elements, and as long as you have a good attitude, and people can really, really do it, Yeah.
If it doesn't kill you.
It's so much fun.
Exactly.
But, hey, the other thing is, definitely I think that the big reasons I always see people apply and want these types of crazy jobs is obviously the money. But secondly, you went to Afghanistan as a medic for a year, man. What's that going to do for your resume?
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you for me, the experience there, I mean, for me, everyone has something else that they come out with. For me, I saw I learned a lot of niches that I was able to develop businesses out of from things that I saw in in Iraq that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. So I had exposure that created a whole new life for me. Other people, they use that clinical experience and maybe they decide to go to PA school or nursing school afterwards. Or I know other people that have, they come back, they really like it, they do tactical training and they go back doing security work.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of that right now. We're trying to get our hands on a couple of contracts with, PSD, tactical medics, things like that. Those guys are seriously hardcore. Yep. Hardcore. Their resumes look like they're hilarious to me because I've talked to these guys. I know, I can hear their voices in my ears as I read their resumes. And he's a skydiver and a pilot and a deep sea diver, and and does nothing but tactical medic work all over the world. I love it when they're like, I was in Bosnia, and
Yep. Yeah, I have a friend of mine. He's a retired PJ, so he was 25 years, Special Forces in the Air Force, and he's got an MBA and another master's degree in biochem something. And despite all that, he goes 2 weeks of the month. He goes to Africa to train African armies and combat medic stuff.
Yeah, why not?
And he always Skypes me. And I'm like, hey, how are you? Where you at? Oh, I'm in Uganda. Hey, I haven't seen you for, I'd bump into him. Haven't seen you in a couple months. Where you been? Someplace. Can't tell you. So.
I have to kill you. Just trust me, I've been somewhere being a very, very big badass.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to wrap this up. We'll put all your contact information and I guess that's it. You have anything else?
No, dude, I'm exhausted.
Awesome.
I've been smiling too long.
Okay. Thanks a lot and take care.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Ambulance World podcast at www.ambulanceworld.com. Please remember to like us on Facebook and sign up for our free newsletter and updates. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter. Any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us at info@ambulanceworld.com. Stay safe and enjoy life.